Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at some gold and crypto miner ETFs that have been outperforming the overall market. And I want to talk to you today about it because it seems like gold is going to be actually hitting around 20,000. So let's dive right into it. So first off, we're going to look at this website that I like to talk about a lot on this channel. It's called Stock Analysis. And the reason for that is because we can actually compare all of the ticker symbols together and their total performance. So let's go into that right now. So as you all must know by now, IBIT represents Bitcoin right here. We can see at 163.09%. And remember, we're doing a max time frame because not all of these ETFs have been around that long. So we need to be looking at what this year was looking like. And we'll go, of course, even further. But I think it's important to keep this in mind. When looking at all of this data, we can see the absolute winners right here are two specific ETFs. And those are WGMI, which is a crypto miners ETF. And then the next one is the GDXJ, which is a gold miners ETF. The reason we want to pay attention to these is because these are the two sectors that are going to be growing the most as inflation and as other things in the market begin to shift. So without having to actively manage stocks in the crypto and gold sectors, we can just go ahead and buy these miner ETFs. So let's look at the total returns right here. As we come to the very bottom, we can actually see where they're at. So I currently actually own IAUM, which is the iShares Gold ETF. We can see where year to date these have been performing. So we can see the clear winner here, right, is this WGMI, right? So year to date, look at that, 159.44%. And we can see the next one up was gold at 133.66%. Now what this is telling me is that investors and people are flocking to gold and Bitcoin. Obviously, we all know this. We can definitely see it within the 1 month. So look, past 1 month, crypto has been skyrocketing, right? Because of those Bitcoin miners. Past year, look at that, 213.67%. And then what is right behind it? Gold at 114.47%. Here is what I want to take a look at right now, right? So something like, gold just is around 51%, right? But we can see exactly where Bitcoin is. And of course, Bitcoin, just direct Bitcoin exposure, IBIT, is only at 29.58%. And VOO, which is the S&P 500, is only at 15.61%. And that's why I'm saying when looking at this from a long-term perspective, we're actually losing money by owning equities in the stock market in the sense of S&P 500. So where does this tell us to go? This actually tells us to flock to none other than gold and of course, Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. That is where I'm looking at right now. What's nice to see is that if we look year to date here, we can actually see where all of these are performing and we can see exactly where the performance are. So let's go right to the very end here if we can do that. So we can see right at the very peak right there. There we go. That's exactly what I want to see on October 8th, 2025. We can see the exact numbers here, right? So total returns for gold and Bitcoin miners are at all-time highs. Of course, we have silver there as well, which is outperforming nice gold and then Bitcoin and then the S&P 500 just as a benchmark. So we can see exactly where those numbers are going. Thing that I like to look at is data driven, right? So let's look at the 1 year time frame. Always nice to see. We can actually see where this is going and what's leading again, right? It's still the crypto miners and of course the gold miners. Now let's look at the 5 year time frame. Of course, this is going to actually be changing because things change as they go over in time. What is this actually showing? Bitcoin and gold are actually the two highest ones at the moment, right? 10 years. And of course, if we look at the numbers here, we can actually see what are the highest ones right here. Bitcoin and gold are the highest ones. That's no surprise, right? And then we can follow by the gold miners, S&P 500, silver, and of course the gold miners and the Bitcoin miners at the very bottom. But my point is that things are shifting in the markets and we can see where these things have performed. As you can see, the Bitcoin miners in 2022 to 2023 did not do great, but something like the S&P 500 was steadily climbing. But then again, we can also look at Bitcoin right here. We can see how volatile it was right through IBIT, even though it hasn't been around that long. And we can see how well of a total return it's been in 5 years. So that is what we want to be thinking of this in totality. Now remember, like they say, past performance isn't indicative of future performance. A good, well-rounded portfolio is going to have a little bit of each one of these. Let's dive into the actual brokerage and we're going to talk about the individual tickers because I think you actually want to take a look look at this. Let's do that right now. So first up here, we are going to be going over the ticker GDXJ. This is the VanEck Junior Gold Miners ETF. And what I like about this specific one is look at how long it's been around for. So we have some time to actually analyze what the data has been saying on this. So the inception date, right, was November 10th, 2009. And we can see year to date, it's up 129.70%, which is staggering to see that for such a old ETF. You know, this thing has been around since essentially recession in 2008. And we can see that we actually have some data to look back on this. So the past 5 years, we can see the numbers have changed. But here's the interesting part, right? If we come to the max time frame, we can see actually in 2011 that this gold miners was actually a lot higher on April 29th, 2011. We are nowhere near that. So we can actually see where gold has been going, right? Hasn't been doing anything as of recent. 5 years, you know, we can see it's only 79.78% past year, but year to date, that is the eye-catching one, 129%. That is insane. And of course, we can come down here and actually look at what companies there are holding in this ETF. So for instance, right, we can actually click on some of these, but notice you're actually holding some silver, which is nice. I like that we're getting some silver exposure, but let's click on something like this, for example, right? We can actually see that the individual stock, right, is going up like nuts, 245.05%. And we can see that this specific company is based out of Chicago. It's been around since 1928. We can actually see what the data says about this. And of course, some of the insights and trends as to what people are doing with this. And of course, we can see they are actually becoming more profitable. But that's what I'm saying. We need to be looking at the individual stocks as well. Let's jump back onto that other page right now. So when looking at this, that's why I say we actually need to be studying these specific companies. Now let's dive on to the next one, which is actually going to be the crypto mining one. Do that right now. My next ETF here is WGMI, which is the CoinShares Bitcoin mining ETF. And what is so staggering again is that year-to-date performance. Look at that, 156.70%. That is just nuts. I have never seen anything like that. And I just wish I would have paid attention to this a lot sooner. But here's the thing that I want to talk about with you all. So this hasn't been around that long. So the inception date of this one has only been around since February 7th, 2022. There's 24 holdings. I actually wish that they would actually show which holdings were in here. We can actually look up that online, but I wish it was just there for ease of use. But the point is that it hasn't been around that long. We can see this was actually listed on February 8th, 2022 for $26.20. We can see that a lot of the time frame, this actually just hasn't been doing much. You know, we had mentioned, right, 2022 was a bear market. We had some spikes here in 2023, but we just really didn't do much, right? And of course, we dived right here on the infamous, you know, tariff scare of this year on April 17th of 2025. But ever since then, look at that. We have been skyrocketing. And what is the reason for that? It's inflation. It's printing of the dollars. Look into this. This is something that I actually discovered just today and wanted to share with you all. Of course, there are a lot more ETFs that you can look into and a lot more companies, but I like to see the performance and how good it's been. We can see the 3-year performance at 73.14%, 1 year 133.17%, which is just crazy. And then since inception, 15.66%. So I think overall, this is a stock that you want to look more into. And of course, ETFs, right? They're just a bunch of stocks, but the ETF and stocks, we need to do more research on this. I'll bring more videos about this because gold and Bitcoin are just going to continue to go up. And of course, as silver as well. Let me know if you have any more questions or want to discuss a specific ETF or stock. Drop it down in the comments below. And as always, thank you for supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.